Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Director of Artist and Studio Programs here at Baltimore Clayworks, and we're thrilled that you all have joined us. I would like to acknowledge that I am joining from my office, located on Piscataway and Susquehannock land, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual artist talk given today by Aisha Harrison. Aisha is a studio and public artist working primarily in clay and bronze. They discovered clay in a community studio while working toward a degree in Spanish at Grinnell College in Iowa. After graduating, she spent the next 2 years teaching third and fourth grades in Atlanta, Georgia, and exploring clay at Collinwold Fine Arts Center in Georgia and Penland School of Crafts in North Carolina. Aisha decided to go back to school and received a BFA from Washington State University and an MFA from University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Aisha is currently working on a large-scale outdoor public art commission with the University of Washington-Tacoma and the Washington State Arts Commission with a solo show at Banbridge Museum of Art in fall of 2025. Their studio work is shown nationally with recent work at the Tacoma Art Museum, Pottery Northwest, the Whatcom Museum, the Boscombe Center for the Visual Arts, Crocker Art Museum, Northern Clay Center, Wanawari Bainbridge Museum of the Art, and the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Washington State University. She has done residencies at Watershed Center for the Ceramic Arts, Women's Studio Workshop, and Baltimore Clayworks. She has taught workshops, courses, programs at Pottery Northwest, Bainbridge Island Museum of Art, Penland School of Crafts, the Evergreen State College, Bocoto Senior Center, Baltimore Clayworks, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and the Lux Center for the Arts. For more information about our artist talks, please visit our virtual library at baltimoreclayworks.org and tune in for our next artist talk on Tuesday, November 8th with Brady Fanning, current Lormina Salter Fellow from 1:30 to 2. I will now turn it over to Aisha.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here and to be there in person in just a couple weeks. My plan today is to show you a little bit about me and my work and my life and kind of how they're all intertwined. And then I think there'll be hopefully some time for some questions at the end. So, without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. Here's my stuff, clay, bronze, mixed media. I'm adding that mixed media in there now because this latest project that I'm working on, which I'm looking at right now, is very much a mixed media piece. But I shall get there soon. So I am a product of my parents, of course, my mom Lucia, my dad Harry, and they were an interracial couple. My dad's black, my mom's white, clearly. So I come from a mixed heritage family. Also kind of mixed in all the ways, like mixed ethnicity, mixed kind of racial identity. So it's a really interesting location to work from as an artist. I'm also queer and I'm a mother and I have a spouse who is trans. So like I just am in like a lot of different spaces that are not like, black or white, like one or the other. And I think that that's a interesting spot to work from. Heavily influenced by my mother, who is an artist as well. Here's a couple of her artist books. She makes books about the environment where we live and about the people who are indigenous to this area and like the names and place names for things. And she spent a lot of her childhood actually just a mile from where I live now, and just being on the water, being in a boat or in like a little troller boat, motoring to the town and stuff. So I think and I live just a mile from there, and this land is where I grew up on, and it's where my mom lived here. My grandparents actually lived on this exact piece of property as well. And so there's this kind of sense of belonging and place that is really important in my work and in my life. and in my body. And I feel like it's just, I have to say, like, how important that is for me. And now I'm raising my child here as well. And so it's kind of like a four generational little plot of land. And I feel it very grateful. And also, it's stolen land basically, right? So I also feel that kind of weight of that. And so, but and I also feel extremely grateful. I just am showing a few influences. So, Frida Kahlo, for sure, major influence for obvious reasons, similar kind of, she deals with a lot of similar concepts as I do. And then also, um, I was a Spanish major in college my first time around. So, um, I studied the way that the indigenous symbols and stories were continued, even though they were forced to kind of use the Catholic symbols as well. They hid their symbols into their artwork. And I found that so intriguing as a Spanish major that it kind of infiltrated into everything I think about going moving forward from there. Even though ended up not being, I mean, I was a Spanish major, but I ended up not using that, but I did use it in a different way. Oy, oy, oy. Okay. Also some artists that really have had a big impacts on me: Adrian Piper, another Black artist, Yoko Ono, who did this cut piece that, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. If you can see it in person, that's better, but I just recommend seeing it in general. Basically, it's a person. I didn't see Yoko Ono do it, but I saw somebody else do it, and they it's a person who, in this case, I saw a woman do it. She asked that people cut off parts of her clothing um, until the end. And to watch, her only rule was that they had to come from the front. And so I watched this. My mindset when I first started watching it was very much like, what can I get from her? What part of her clothing do I like? Ooh, I like her shirt, which is why I'm including this little piece of the shirt that I actually do still have, and it's on my wall because it was so impactful to watch my own thinking shift from what can I get from her to watching the way that she would flinch every time the scissors would touch her, the way that people would pass the scissors over her head. And so they were not respecting that she asked people come from the front. Um, and and of course, by the end, I'm just like sobbing watching this violation, right? And that's the point of the piece. But also, I think what it taught me is more than just, I mean, that is a huge revelation. And also, art can really do things, it can really change things, it can really change your mind, it can change your life, like this piece changed mine. So I think that was the turning point where I was like, okay, maybe art is worth doing for real. Um, and this slide is like a lot of my influences, including images like this, which is of flowers that one of my very close friends, she's a flower farmer, and we are thought partners. And it also includes these braids in the back, which are my spouse hand dyes wool, and that is I mean, they are a huge part of my support system and also thought partner. And then this this is my another very close friend. And then I also like read all the time. So I am an audiobook person. And so I just read constantly while I'm working. And so a lot of like what I'm reading kind of like attaches itself to the work, which I think is kind of an interesting way to be. It's a good life. I read a lot of science fiction, a lot of books like The Seed Keeper. If you haven't read The Seed Keeper, oh, it's just one of the bestest books. Actually, everything on the screen's the bestest books. Okay, next. um, as I mentioned before, I'm very interested in place and my place and so this is the Salish Sea where I live. I live at the very tip of the one of the peninsulas, and so I just am by the water a lot, and I need that big water in my life, and I also need the plants and animals around me. This is this Western red cedar, which is an indigenous plant to this area, and um, one of my faves. And then the salmon, I was a salmon watcher for a little while and learned a lot about the salmon and about how um, they are, it's not, they're like past the idea of an indicator species, which like this caddisfly is an indicator species, which means like the health of that species it determines the health of the rest of the ecosystem. The salmon, so many people include, I'm using people very loosely, like so many people and entities rely on the salmon, including the forests. I mean, it's wild. And so here they do like salmon tosses. If a river system is not getting enough salmon nutrients out into the forest, they'll actually go to a river that has excess salmon and move those salmon to a different river because it's so vital for our ecosystem and for our people. And so I'm very much about that and about, like this eelgrass down here. I mean, why would you think that was important? But actually, it's an indicator species. So it's pretty wild. I'm also, this is another tree that's indigenous to our area called the red alder, and it grows these little red roots that stick out in the rivers. They're hard to find, but when you do, it's really magic. And I love bringing that kind of idea into my work. So you'll see that. There's also kind of this like dark, um, warm space, the cave, the womb. That's definitely a part of my work. And also a place where I go when I'm trying to figure out what to make next. It's a place where I commune with my ancestors, um, and also not just my human ones, but my more than human ancestors. So that kind of, I don't think of the dark as negative. I think of it as like a creative space that sort of allows for growth and yeah, and yeah, and then the stars are the same, that has that kind of um from the earth darkness to the sky darkness. I love both. And then this is a picture of my child when they were pretty young, in these root systems that we have here where there'll be a tree that falls down and then another tree will grow on the top, or many actually usually will grow on the top, and then the first tree will disintegrate over time and the nutrients will get used up, and so we have these big sort of root systems that are visible. Really super cool. So I'm just like all up in that. um, and then, I'm really influenced by ancestral stuff as well. And like my family, this is my dad with my kid as a very young child. And this is my mom with my kid as a very young child. This is a piece that I made that I'll show you a little bit more later and is of an ancestor who I've had a lot of kind of one-on-one sort of experience with at this point. This is the maple, big leaf maple samara seed. And then this is a big leaf maple. So yeah, I'm in the middle of making a big leaf maple tree. So they're very, very present in my life right now. Um, and I'm also there with the grief. Um, there's so much grief And this is a manipulated image. I mean it's very hard to find somebody drowning. It's not an easy picture to find. And I don't really want that. I kind of want that shape. I want to show, for me, there's this relationship between the transatlantic drown. There's so many people drowned, so many people died in that crossing. People, trying to, yeah. And so the big leaf maple has been this kind of, um, in these, I do this journaling technique. I'm going to show you the next slide. I think it's, oh, nope. There. I do this journaling technique called touch drawing where things will emerge, and it's very fast and very loose, and you draw with your fingers on tissue paper. And so it's not like a product, it's not an end product thing. And what happens is I things will come through. And so the maple samara, just the way I'm just connected to those anyway. The ancestors. Ah, technology. Okay. But I just wanted to say one more thing. I'm also really connected to the joy. And I'm really interested in like looking at everything, looking around, finding these kind of amazing, like, look at this. This just happened one day, right? Like, it's just, things are just amazing. Life is amazing. And so I'm also really just like very tapped into any small experience where I can find joy. I also do Aikido. This is an image of Aikido, not me, but I just got my black belt, which is pretty great. Um, and so in Aikido, we do a lot about being connected to the key of the universe, right? So it's not just like me, my individual body, but I'm actually a part of something much bigger. And so and I can tap into that energy, and I can feel where it needs to go in order to reach a less combative state if somebody's trying to hit me, right? But also it's more than that, right? That's just like that's like the way we practice it, but actually our lives are much, at least for me, my life includes that in it all the time. Okay, work. Let's get there. All right. So I just wanted to say about touch drawing too. I use these images to develop work. So these are a couple of 2D carving images that were developed directly from touch drawings. And then sometimes they turn into three-dimensional work as well. So you'll kind of see a direct correlation between these two drawings, which came from touch drawings, and then these two uh, ceramic pieces. Let's see. You can again see the roots going down, the roots reaching up towards the stars, and these are painted with stars, and roots coming out of pelvises. Man, pelvises are really really cool. uh, birth. It's just so many things, right? So here's a couple more. This is the boat of hands, which is made up of a bunch of hands. The hands are casts of my hands, my child's hands, my dad's hands, and my mom's hands. And then the wrists have these holes where the branches come out, because I'm trying to think about not just my human lines, but also my plant and animal lines. And so that's where those branches come in. And this piece came to me because I was down in the cave, and um I became water, and all of my ancestors were around, holding, kind of in the water with me and holding the water. And so that's where this piece comes from. Here's a couple more. This Shinanam prayer, this river is Shinanam River is a very special sacred river here, and there was a lot of things that happened on this river, but I was a salmon steward for this river, and so I went and watched the salmon and tried to count them for certain periods of time for a year. And so I learned a lot about the salmon and just, just being like present with something very often, not every day, but pretty often, you just start to see it and you start to love it. And so I'm giving a prayer for that river and for the salmon. Um, and then I'm doing a working on a series. It's kind of a long-standing series where I'm trying to honor Black and Indigenous women and non-binary folks who are sort of like doing a lot in the community, but maybe don't get the recognition, or they're sort of behind the scenes, but they are kind of like making things happen. And so Mama T and Shamika are both people who, and they're still alive. So I want to like honor them while they're alive still, and talk about them and just kind of try to embody the things that we talk about. So these are actual relationships that I have, and we talk a lot about what they want and how they want to be depicted, because I think that is such a vital part of depicting humans. And then these two pieces are super recent, and they actually go together. So this piece fits in. So I make this giant pile of dirt, and then I put the arm in there and settle it in, and then take the arm out, hang it up, and then I create this kind of scene, I guess. It's an interesting piece for me. I it's not it's It has a lot of aspects to it, many of which I relayed in the beginning of this slideshow. And I feel like it's a little bit on the like learning edge for me, like the kind of the edge of where I'm at. And so I'm really excited about it and also a little bit nervous to talk about it. So I think yeah. And then I just want to show this because this is the kind of thing that I'm imagining doing in this workshop that we're going to be doing in a couple weeks. So um, I make these sort of smaller busts that um, yeah, they're I think of them as like ancestors. And I find images of people, because I don't have images of my ancestors. I find images in books or other documents from a while back, and you know, I go through them and I find people who like jump out at me as they could be my ancestor for whatever reason. And then this is a piece called Love Letter, which is still in process. So there's so much to do still. I have a lot of volunteers who are coming to help, including my mother right here, who already finished actually making 600 leaves for this tree. She's a paper maker and bookmaker, like I mentioned at the beginning of the slideshow. And so there's just a lot of process to get the tree to its final stage for the Baltimore, I mean, sorry, I'm coming to Baltimore for the Bay Ridge Island Museum of Art show, which is coming up in November. And so I'm like frantically working away trying to get this completed. And all this moss that you see is hand felted, actually hand dyed. We dyed all this moss. Like I was saying, my spouse is a wool dyer, and so they taught me how to do it and helps me do it. And so we develop these colors um, now people are coming over. I don't have any pictures of that, but people are coming over to help needle felt all the moss, so that all these big mossy area. These are all going to be covered with moss. All these areas down at the bottom, and then there's also, the picture doesn't show, but the tree continues up and there's moss all on the inside. And then there's also branches that, like a bunch of branches, large limbs and small limbs and branches that are all there. And so anyway, it's a huge piece, a huge process, and still in process. But I wanted to show because it is very forefront on my mind at the moment. I also wanted to briefly talk about my public art practice. So this is the very first piece that I made for like a public, I guess, a public setting. I think clay, when I was actually at Clayworks, I made very large life size, if not bigger than life size human figures. And people really responded to them. And somebody wanted to buy one and put it outside. And I was like, oh, you can't put it outside. Clay's not that great for that. You could, but, it's not really the best. It's not really the best for the work, you know. Um, and so it just got me thinking about it. And so I decided to try bronze, and bronze is amazing. I mean, the material itself is so much like once it gets finished, it looks just so much like the clay. I mean, it retains your fingerprints, which is amazing. And so I love it. I love working with the foundry that I'm working with in Tacoma. They're wonderful. And so what I do is I make the piece in clay, whether that's water-based clay or oil clay is what I'm using now. But this piece was my very first one, so I made it in water-based clay. And I couldn't afford to get this just cast, out of the blue. So I did a crowdsource GoFundMe, and I raised over $20,000 to get this piece made. And I'm so grateful. Here's some detail close-ups of this work. And so then we had once the piece finally was done, I entered it into this competition to get it on a plinth. And then it got in. And not only that, but the city decided to purchase it as well. And so now it's permanently installed in my town, which is kind of awesome to have a piece that's mine here. And so many people came out to support that work and to support me. And I just feel so grateful for that. And what that did was it kind of launched me into the public art sphere. It's interesting. They don't, I got on this roster, public art roster for Washington State, but they don't really want to see your studio practice. They don't It's an interesting, like they want to see public art. And so it's just interesting, you can't do public art unless you have that background. So it's a very difficult kind of thing to get into, I think, especially for large scale bronze sculpture, which is what I do. Um, anyway, I did that last piece and then got on the roster. And so now I have a amazing uh work in progress with the University of Washington and the Washington State Arts Commission called What We Tend Will Grow. And it is a seed pod table based on a lotus seed pod. And I did over 20 workshops with people in Tacoma where the piece is going to live. And so in those workshops, we made seeds, which were small sculptures, not necessarily seeds, of the trying to depict what each participant was hoping for, like their dreams for their future or for their community. And so it was an amazing process. And then we so here's a couple of examples of seeds seeds that people made in those workshops. And so then I had to put all of those. I'm saying we because I have help. People have helped me. Um, we put all of these seeds into the seed pod table, into these pods, right? And then um, this is the clay, oil clay version. And then all of the seeds are actually fired clay. And so what's gonna happen is they're going to make a mold of this table, and then we'll be able to keep the because the molds are, we'll release the clay pieces, so we'll be able to keep the clay pieces and give them back to participants when they come for the grand opening of the piece, which is pretty cool. So they'll get to have their little seed that they made and also find it in the table. Um, then there's also a figure and a bench that are going to be going with this table. Um, so that's that project, which is pretty awesome. And that is it. So thank you so much for listening.